Recovery is not a solo endeavor. It's a team sport. You need a community around you to cheer you on, to lend an ear, to pick you back up when you fall. That's what Foundation's Recovery Network's Life Challenge program is here for. We are a positive, motivational community aimed at breaking down life's barriers and celebrating the accomplishments along the way. Our motto is, Dear Life, Challenge Accepted. Are you up for the challenge? Go to lcaccepted.com or call 615-221-5861.
That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
Yo, what's up? Thanks for tuning in today. Thanks to Humans for bringing us in. And thanks to you for supporting the show. I want to give a big shout out to everybody supporting the recovery movement from Northern California to Southern California across the map. It's an honor to represent this great community of people. We have listeners from all over the world. I'm just so proud and humbled to be a part of it. So thank you. A couple of announcements to make real quick, and then we'll get to our guest today, who I'm super stoked to have on. I am excited to announce Sober Guy Radio will be podcasting from the Innovations in Recovery Conference in San Diego, California. That's April 3rd through the 6th at Hotel Del Coronado. One of the most beautiful hotels I've seen. Actually was there last year. Didn't do any podcasting at the event, but met with some of the great folks at Foundations and hung out there for a while. It's going to be a great event. So big thanks to Foundations for hosting the event as well as inviting Sober Guy out. Really stoked about that. If you want any more information on how you can get a ticket to the event, or you just want to check out more info about it, go to www.foundationsevent.com/innovationsinrecovery. Also, one of the tools I use, one of my favorite ones, it's Transitions Daily. It's a daily AA email, and it's delivered right to my inbox. It's a great way to start your day. It literally takes me about 5 minutes to read, and it really is one of my favorite tools because it's quick and it helps set my mind right for the day and get on that track. If you want some more info about that, you can go to dailyaaemails.com and you can sign up there. Today's guest is Dr. John Mendelson. Super stoked to have him on. He is the Chief Medical Officer for DxRx Medical, and you may have heard me talk about this on the show in the last couple episodes because DxRx is a current sponsor of Sober Guy Radio. And I had also mentioned that Jess and I went out and met with John and the rest of the team out there and had some dinner and saw the facility. They're in a room called an accelerator room, which I had never seen before. It was one of the coolest experiences Jess and I had. We're gonna talk to John a little bit about that, get some background, and find out about all kinds of cool stuff going down with DxRx and the program app that can help you get sober or reduce your drinking. All kinds of cool stuff. Now, John is a professor of medicine at UCSF and the senior research scientist for Friends Research Institute. He's the medical director of Bay Area Addiction Research and Treatment Programs, and obviously very distinguished in clinical research and primary care. He's an expert in addiction, and it's really an honor to have him on. He's a great dude. He's pretty damn funny guy too, and I'm excited to chat with him. John, it's great to have you on Sober Guy Radio today, my friend. How are you?
I'm fine. What a sweet introduction.
Yeah, you are quite distinguished. I had a hard time even going through some of your background, so maybe you can do me some justice and fill us in on that.
Okay, well, I'm a physician, and I trained at UCSF Medical School like centuries ago, back when leeches were still in use, and I graduated in 1982, and then I paid for medical school through something called the National Health Service Corps. Did my National Health Corps service in a clinic in the Tenderloin, treating frail elders at home. Then went into practice in '87, and then started doing research in '89 or so, working with a guy named Reese Jones at UCSF, and he was interested in stimulants, and so I started studying methamphetamine and how methamphetamine affects people. And then wrote grants and did projects, and eventually we landed a project to work on parts of what is now Suboxone, work on what are called the pharmacokinetics of how the drug is metabolized and taken out of the body, and that led to our data, along with many other people, as we were not a major part of it, led to the approval of Suboxone as a treatment for heroin addiction, and that's now been a big advancement. Then I started doing more patient care around Suboxone. I was one of the first physicians waivered, to use Suboxone in private practice. And then our lab focused on methamphetamine addiction, and we searched for many possible treatments and failed at all of them, but learned some interesting things along the way about how the drug works. We also did studies of MDMA, or ecstasy, in people, looking at mechanisms of how it acts in people, what it actually does and how it does its stuff. And finally, that was the research side. And based on all that, we came up with some ideas on how to do a treatment solution, and that's what DxRx is. So that's a system where we've I brought a lot of the knowledge from both the clinical side and the research side to address alcohol use and to decrease our goal is to either have people decrease their alcohol use by at least 50% or to stop drinking altogether. But we support either one. And so we're kind of unique in that frame. And what we do is we use breathalyzers, which the police departments use, but these breathalyzers are paired to your smartphone, give very accurate readings, and we have you breathalyze twice a day, and that way we can actually quantify just how much alcohol you're drinking, and that lets us know how much you're drinking, and we can actually measure how much you decrease your drinking with things we do, which include medications and counseling and stuff like that.
Yeah, I want to get into the DxRx and kind of the more components of it too. But first, I want to jump back real quick and ask you something. You said the study of MDMA, and I find that really interesting in the fact that I'm wondering, and I'm sure some other people out there listening may be wondering the same thing. How do you study something like that, and what are those? What do kind of trials like something like that look like?
Well, they. So our lab, what we did for them, was so we did what were called human laboratory interaction studies. So we would take people who were used MDMA, bring them to the laboratory, and then keep them in the hospital. The laboratory meant a hospital ward. We had a special ward at UCSF for research called the General Clinical Research Center, and met them overnight, and then we dosed them with placebo or MDMA the next day. And if in many cases, we were interested in, we wanted to understand how much of it MDMA effects were due to something called alpha adrenergic response, or were due to SSR, serotonergic. So we give people an SSRI or an alpha block or something called prazosin, and so they get one of four. They come to the hospital 4 separate nights over 4 weeks, and they get on one condition they get a placebo, one condition they get MDMA alone, the next they get the SSRI or the alpha blocker, and then they get the combination in the 4th condition, right? And then we'd measure effects very carefully for 12 hours. So it sounds like super exciting research, but it's actually not that exciting. It's tedious.
Yeah.
But you end up, but at the end of it, you end up at the end with you end up at the end of that with a pretty good understanding of the drug interactions,
Yeah. So that would be directly how it affects the brain, or directly how. And we also were interested in heart effects as well. So we did a lot of cardiac studies, Yeah, because you hear of that. Is that? I mean, I guess that's what would cause an overdose, right? If you overdose,
well,
it's going to.
Actually, with ecstasy, it's pretty interesting. So the theory in the past was that people died of dehydration after ecstasy, but several case reports came out showing something called hyponatremia, which in English is a low sodium level in the blood. Okay, and you only get the low sodium level implies overhydration. Okay, So back in the 70s, there were cases of people getting, hyperthermic. Their body temperatures would rise very high.
Yeah.
And it was partly attributed to the fact that the dance clubs, particularly in England, to sell more water, actually turned the taps off in the bathroom.
Oh, wow.
Right? So like,
damn bastards.
Yeah, exactly. What a bunch of assholes. So at any rate, so then the word went out, all the people at Dance Safe and everyone else said, hydrate yourself really well, right? Make sure you're well hydrated. And the clubs all turned on the taps. Then we started getting cases of predominantly young women who had were having seizures after ecstasy, right? And in their examination, their blood sodium level was substantially low, and low sodiums lead to seizures.
Yeah.
So we're going, how does that happen? So there's a hormone called vasopressin, and everyone's probably heard of oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone that makes you closer to other people. Goes up during pregnancy, goes up during delivery. It's made in some place called the posterior pituitary gland, and a very close relative of oxytocin is this stuff called vasopressin, which also goes up during labor and delivery. And so the theory was, maybe you get like release of both oxytocin and vasopressin, and vasopressin gives you low sodiums. Okay, vasopressin makes it so you don't pee as much.
Yeah.
So we looked at that, and that wasn't the answer either, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we actually did show that a single dose of MDMA decreases people's sodium measurably, and so we think it's a direct effect on the kidney. And now we recommend, now we don't recommend aggressive hydration for MDMA users, but rather regular amounts of drinking, and minimal doses.
What's the chemical that makes everybody want to give you a damn massage?
That's ecstasy. That's MDMA.
No, I know, but is there something that releases in the body, I guess is what I'm saying. I just remember, I want a massage. Can you just, the massage right now. It's just comedy when I think back.
And that's oxytocin. That's oxytocin.
Okay, that is what you were just talking about then.
So several, and in our hands, we didn't actually show increases in oxytocin, but we did show increases in people wanting to be closer to each other.
Yeah.
And we showed. So we had this task where we showed people faces that we had these we had an animated set of faces. They start out neutral, so that they don't have any emotion at all, but they morph over a few seconds into either a smiling face that's happy, or a frowning face that's sad, or a face with big eyes that's fearful. Like where the eyebrows go up, and MDMA, and we asked people to push a button as soon as they recognize the face. It's sort of a little game, right?
Yeah.
And so MDMA impaired fear recognition. Okay.
Really?
Impaired. So it made you less noticing of other people's fear. Right. Which is maybe the way that it lets you be closer to others. A bunch of teenagers in a dance. I mean, I remember going to dance halls and big dance parties. And you're actually. You're happy you're there, but you're terrified too.
Yeah. All the girls on one side, all the dudes on the other.
Exactly, and you want at least one of those girls.
Yeah.
Right. You want one of these girls, but you got to go over there.
Yeah.
And try not to look like a complete idiot. Right. So if you can suppress and if the other person's afraid, you're even more afraid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Fear's one of those things that like the signal is like if I look afraid, you should be looking around for what's going to be happening next.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
But you're saying that fear, that reaction or response to fear was much less when the person on MDMA was going through those phases. They were having a hard time recognizing the fear.
It was subtle, but it was measurable.
Yeah.
So,
okay. I see.
So we were proposing that maybe one of the ways that MDMA makes people closer to others is that it makes you less recognize fear.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. What?
Right?
One other thing I want to touch on too that you had mentioned, for those who are not from the Northern California area like John and I, or have not been to San Francisco, maybe aren't familiar with it, you had mentioned the Tenderloin. I know you've done a lot of work out there. You've been there for years. Really, it's really a place that is a very rough spot, and I'll let you kind of take the wheel on this one. I'd really like to get your description of the Tenderloin. What kind of, maybe even a little bit of history of it will be great, because it's super interesting and it's super sad at the same time, because there's a lot of people struggling out there, from my knowledge, even up until today.
Yes. So he's talking. What Shane's talking about. There's a neighborhood in San Francisco that's slightly north of Market Street. It's bounded by Market Street on the eastern side, by Van Ness on the west, by probably Sutter Street on the north, and Powell Street on the south. And so it's just above the downtown shopping district. And what made it, and it's full of largely brick buildings, 8 stories or so, 8 to 9 stories tall, with apartments in them. And in the 40s, in the 30s and 40s, when these apartments were built, they were state of the art. They were, and the people who lived there were predominantly the first wave of single people to work in offices, both men and women. Okay?
Yeah.
And so the apartments were considered for their time luxurious. Now, most of the apartments did not have a kitchen, and most of them did not have a bathroom. Bathroom was down the hall, and many of them had Murphy beds, right? So they were small studios that, single people working retail and clerical in downtown San Francisco got, and that was sort of the beginning of San Francisco bohemian scene. These were, these were unmarried people, so many of them were gay, or libertarian in some way.
Yeah.
And it was affordable housing for the working people, and it was walking distance to the financial district.
So it's kind of like a community building almost, where you have a shared bathroom, a shared kitchen, everyone lives together, but it's affordable, being that you may be working retail, you may be working something to kind of.
So then along, that was the 30s, and then after World War II, there was a massive housing boom. Transportation was much easier, and the Tenderloin basically emptied out of those people. They all bought houses in the Sunset, or out in they moved to the suburbs, right?
Yeah.
They had a car now, and many of them got married and and ended up not living single anymore, right? So then the Tenderloin devolved into the place where all the veterans, and particularly the merchant marines, came to live. And that was in part merchant marines. So in World War II, if you were a merchant marine, you were the equivalent of drafted, but you had no protection.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And in fact, you did not get a military pension. You got a merchant marine pension, and you got access to the merchant marine hospitals. There were only 6 of them nationwide, and one was here in San Francisco. Huh. Okay. So after, and of course, the people in the merchant marine were, all the movies are kind of correct. They were drinkers and carousers and misfits of various types. They really couldn't get a lot of other jobs.
Yeah.
So the Tenderloin filled up with merchant marine. There's still bars like the Gangway and that sort of are back to that era.
Yeah.
And
probably some cool
those guys,
tattoo parlors back then, I'm thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Those guys were heavy drinkers and drug, like crazy. And so the Tenderloin slid down from this from a middle class working community to a to a veterans and veterans that didn't get into the Army were only in the merchant marine community that was not as functional, right? And that stayed that way. It stayed that way through the 70s. And when I was at North of Market Senior Services, about 20% of our clients were, ex-merchant Marines.
Got it.
Had been. I really did have patients who said they took a bath once a week, whether they needed it or not.
Really?
Yeah. Right? We tried to schedule. What day is that? We said, what day do you take your bath? Tuesday. Okay, you can come to the office on Wednesday. Right?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Like, make sure you
because
throw some deodorant on too, please.
They ain't coming Monday.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh man.
Right, but I mean, it was a pretty rowdy crowd.
Yeah.
So So that was the Tenderloin of the 70s, and then that morphed into with mass incarceration, the place where people were sent after incarceration, were these same hotels that would accommodate merchant marines and others. So you had a community that progressively declined from, like high functioning working people, to ex-merchant marines to ex-convicts. And so that's where it stands right now. But now that's being nibbled at the edges because there's several challenges in that community. That the housing stock is being rebuilt, but not in this single room occupancy. It doesn't meet code standards.
Well, if somebody listening though were to go to the Tenderloin today, what would they see? Or what
they'd see a few blocks. They'd see a few blocks that are really kind of scary, kind of terrifying. Mm-hmm. Like some of them are near my methadone clinics. Mm-hmm. Of young people, multi races, multi genders, but see young people standing on the street actually doing drugs and looking menacing, and there's about 4 or 5 blocks like that. Then they'd see a bunch of other blocks that have there's a little Saigon. They'd see a little Vietnamese community in there that's still vibrant with stores and restaurants. Then they'd see increasing numbers of young professionals, who actually are living there. Yeah. Because they want to work in this. They want the same advantages that the people in the 40s and 50s wanted, or 30s and 40s wanted. They want to be able to walk to downtown. And
San Francisco is such a unique place like that. Like how everything is just so close together, just like you're describing. You could have one block that looks menacing and is scary, and the next block over is completely the opposite.
Exactly. And with a couple great restaurants on it. And those blocks they shift. There's St. Anthony's is still in the heart of the Tenderloin, which does the largest food program and has a free clinic. So right now the Tenderloin is in transition between reasserting itself as a place for young single workers, who want to be walking distance to the financial district, and ex-convicts, who some of whom actually earned their way into jail. Some of whom were just rounded up and. But some of whom are really bad, not very good people, kind of scary, terrifying people. And I do supervise 2 clinics in the neighborhood with a total of about 1,500 patients.
What is that like for you? I mean, what is the amount of work and I would imagine it's a bit of a roller coaster.
I actually really like it. It's actually a lot of fun. It's from a doctor's perspective. They're great cases. The cases are. In fact, they're texting me now. There's a 36-year-old heroin user with 15 years of heroin use, right? And he needs to get started on methadone today. Yeah. His first time in. What else is there at the clinic this morning? There's patients who have need dose adjustments. But the methadone patients often came from someplace they don't all, they start out like pretty normal people, and they start playing with opiates or get onto opiates for some reason. Some maybe 20% get on for actually a medical cause, they had an actual injury, and then they end up rapidly escalating doses, become tolerant and dependent. And then start to slide down, and once they sort of transition to injection drug use and start getting abscesses and Hep C, I mean, they really mess their lives up.
So because you're John, you're also Dr. Mendelson. So when you kind of got to separate those two, have you found in the past or maybe even up until today, have you ever had that personal connection or that emotional attachment to maybe a specific story that's really hard for you to deal with, or are you able? I mean, obviously you have a ton of experience. You've been doing this for a long time. Have you been able to kind of go into work and be compassionate, obviously, and understand the work you're doing, of course, but look at it more from a clinical perspective and trying to get these, these poor people who are really struggling the help that they need.
Well, I think one of the great things about being a doctor, all good doctors actually eventually connect emotionally with every one of their patients.
Yeah.
We just don't die. We just don't die from it.
Yeah.
We have a little distance.
Yeah.
We use our,
Yeah.
the intellectual part of ourselves to to
be able to kind of separate.
But we always get emotionally involved.
Yeah.
And and feel what's going on with the patients.
Is there one story that stands out to you that really hits you?
Yeah. Here's a good one. So the methadone clinic, you're always thinking of, like a lot of patients have been there's a lot of heroism in the back of the stories. And so I remember we had this older African American woman on heroin for like 40 years, and she's sent to medical. She's been stable on her methadone dose, except that she has a heart problem, and the heart problem is causing her to have low oxygen levels in her blood, because the blood goes, instead of flowing through the heart, it flows around it. There's what's called an atrial septal defect, right? And so so the combination of methadone and this ASD leads to her getting very like short of breath, and so we have to lower her methadone dose. So I'm chat with her, and it's seems like a pretty typical person. So I asked her about what strengths she had. Well, she's been married, and she's still married to the same guy for 40 years. They both use heroin, but they're both married for 40 years. And I said, well, what else you got going, and how did it start? Oh, he got me into it, it was like a thing, but we're still together. So you go, wow, that's pretty well, like marriage based on heroin. So where can that go, right? And what about children? Oh, I got two. Well, one of them is a Stanford law grad, who lives in the city. Wow. Another one's like some other high position someplace, right? Like, what's going on here? She said, I raised them good. I got them all raised up, got them to school, So she's like this little tiger mom, right? With a weird medical condition and heroin addiction.
Wow.
And you're going, what the hell? So and a stable marriage, more stable marriage than many other people have.
Yeah.
Right? You're going, what is going on here? So it was stories like that. You go, this is so you dig under the surface, you find all kinds of stuff, and these are survivor populations, and so they've survived other stuff as well.
Sure.
Some of them are just assholes who are who have never done a responsible thing in their lives. But a surprising number, are at completely the other end, are much more responsible than maybe I would have been.
Yeah.
Right?
How do you deal with the asshole that comes in? Because that's got to be tough too.
Yeah. You give them their moment of time and limit them to what they're getting, and then next please, and you have rules that right. You can't yell at the staff. You have to be here on time.
So don't be a whole asshole, but you can be like maybe 80% asshole, just enough
exactly.
to make you feel better about yourself.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And if you want to change, someone will help you. But like right now, get out of our hair.
Yeah. I want to jump into this Indie Bio Demo Day thing too. Yeah. I've been waiting to talk to you about that, but I have one more question for you regarding this, because I find these stories so interesting. Is there one story that you can think of that you just saw someone, because I think they're inspiring too. You saw someone really at the depths of it who actually came out and was able to come out on top, and I don't know if necessarily we ever beat it, but at least maintain it and get well and really change their life around?
Yeah, I think I've got lots of patients that were circling the drain and are now, stable in their jobs and, doing and maintaining their relationships. I think that would be, you could, about half the patients we treat, really just go on as if they were just in their regular lives. They really don't. Once this is for both opiates and alcohol.
Yeah.
If once you get them treated and moving, right? Quite a few of them, you wouldn't know they have any addiction problem at all, right?
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't have a clue on that. Many do use groups and use AA and things or NA, but a number don't use those either. They're pretty damn stable. I'm thinking I got like one guy I see every 3 months now, and he's got a great position in a tech company. He's married, has a couple kids. He is a coach in his in his school team. You wouldn't know a thing about this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You'd think he was just vanilla, completely vanilla. Well,
I think that's such a good that's such a good thing to point out there too. Is that addiction, alcoholism, it does not discriminate, and a lot of people who don't understand it and who don't know a lot about it, maybe they haven't been affected by it either themselves or with a loved one. It's not just the guy or the gal laying in a doorway with a brown bag, homeless. You know what I mean? Because that's like the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people.
Exactly.
And it's normal people.
And that's the end of a failed system.
Yeah, yeah. That's
and I think the other huge news is you don't need to wait to rock bottom to get something going. That is our central thesis with DxRx.
Yeah, and I think that's a great transition actually into that, because I love that, and I'm actually a really good example of that, John. Like I didn't like a lot of my friends or people I know who either lost their lives or went to jail or had multiple DUIs. I don't know how, but thankfully none of that stuff happened to me other than the gut feeling that something really bad was about to happen. And I was able to get the help beforehand. And so you point that out. You don't have to wait until all that bad shit happens to reach out and get help. And that's kind of what the DxRx program is about. And let's jump into that. But let's start with Jess and I coming out there and you guys taking us through this accelerator room, which was super, super cool. Explain to us, John, what an accelerator room is.
Okay. Well, I've done academic medical research for 30 years, and you have a team and you have offices, and everyone has their little office and have a conference room.
Yeah.
In this situation, what happened there? There were this group. There were 12 companies that were brand new. We were one of the companies. So we had to compete to get in. We had to go, convince the people who run the place that we have a viable idea that can make a lot of money and help the world.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and then in October 1st, that all 12 companies arrive, and just imagine a big basement. It looks like a school cafeteria, I described it looking like detention.
Yeah.
There were desks. Desks. There's like 2 rows of desks.
Yeah.
Right. And down the middle, and then the people who run the accelerator sit in the back. Right. Like in there. And so at any rate, you get down there and they give you a desk, the power outlet. You got to bring your own extension cord, and they give you $200,000. Okay. Right. And to launch your company. So they want your team there every day from 9 to 5 minimally, right? And what happens is that all the companies start work, and every week you have to present each company. Every Friday there's a presentation of what you accomplished this week, right? And then the companies vote on that. The people, the accelerator, the gurus of the accelerator, say which 3 companies they think did the best, and the other companies vote on which of those 3 did the best, and they win an award, the killer of the week. So you're really, you're seeing people. So everyone starts at zero. I mean, these are all companies. There were a couple companies that had some money previously, but most of us hadn't had any actual funding up till now. So we've been bootstrapping it, doing the. So this is the first real money for a company. And then you're watching a week over week change. One company arrived with something written on a piece of paper as an idea, and they built a prototype twice a week. Like Monday and Thursday, they built prototypes.
Yeah.
And ended up at the end of it with a finished product. So what's cool is that you see everyone making progress. So we started out with no apps or website services constructed, and by mid-December we had the website and apps constructed, the basics of those, and deployed in the App Store and Google Play. So that's how fast you move. You move at this rather amazing pace, and it was just really cool to watch everyone else go at the same pace. There was really no one who dropped out. There was no one who failed. And didn't show up. There was one team where one of the founders disappeared one day, was replaced, right? Like there's some back drama there. But there was not even that much drama. So
when we came through there, you guys were kind enough to give Jess and I a little tour of it and meet some of the good people working on different projects, and from stem cell research to mice. There was something I can't remember exactly how that one worked, because it was a lot of it was way beyond my normal thinking, but super interesting stuff. And I think you and I kind of touched on this before we got started, is the fact when you get a bunch of creative minds in a space like that involving science and entrepreneurship and good people really trying to make changes. Man, some of the some of the energy and creation process, it can really just push you that much faster. And I guess that hence the name Accelerator Room, right? Like you're in there to just get that shit done and do it.
And the people who run the place are also they've incubated other companies. They've helped launch other companies. So they know what milestones people should be achieving. And so they're there to both prod you and help you. They have connections. So you have to solve a problem. They'll help you find the person to solve the problem.
Got it.
And they actually had wet labs too. They actually had labs there, so that the companies that were doing actual lab work, could actually run their lab experiments
right there on the spot.
There's a company that's making, so it turns out snake bite is actually a significant problem in the world. I never knew this. There are like 500,000 amputations a year and several 100,000 deaths around the world, and there's no universal snake antivenom, right? And the antivenom that does exist has to, it's perishable, has to be kept in a hospital. So by the time people get to it, they're often the limbs are destroyed.
Well, a lot of times you would probably have to identify what type of snake it is too, right?
Well, so these guys have they know that they've actually made the key parts of the antibodies in a recombinant system, right, for all snakes, right? And they're going to package it in one like EpiPen like container as a dried product that will be usable in the field. Right. So that's really cool.
That's super cool. So basically, you could be out doing research or maybe you're just fucking chasing snakes. I don't know. God,
exactly.
God help you if that's what you do. But you got the pen, and if you get bit, boom, you can stab your arm with that anti-venom right there, and keep your damn arm or your leg.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So there are rattlesnakes. Most of them are not in the United States. There are only a few thousand snake bites in the United States. Yeah. But in India and in parts of Africa, again, there's a death every 2 or 3 minutes from snake bite.
Man, that is crazy.
It's amazing. So, so it's often young people or children.
Yeah.
So it's a significant thing, and so these guys got, they found the problem that they were fascinated by, and they built a solution, and they started out with basically just a concept. And by the time they left, they'd identified several elements of a universal antivenom antibody system. So they're on their way.
Yeah.
They're on their way. They proved they can. They got to. So
just some great examples of cool things going on, and to bring it back to DxRx. I mean that's another one. You guys, I know you recently presented at the Indie Bio demo day out in San Francisco. I got a chance to watch that, man. It was really, really cool to see. You did a great job, and one of the things that I liked, and I thought maybe we have you kind of break down the program, what it is, so people out there listening can understand it better and then go ahead and look into it if they're interested. I like how you laid out Let's Meet Mike, and I was hoping that you could kind of take the example of Mike real fast and kind of lay this out, how this program works and how it might fit into someone's lifestyle or someone that they love.
Exactly. So our thesis is that there's many people who have alcohol use disorder. We created a fictional character named Mike, who's in his mid-30s. He's married, has a family, has a career. He's been pretty successful. But since his 20s, he's been drinking excessively. And at some point in his 30s, he loses control, right? And he no longer can stop.
Classic.
And can't control his drinking. And he can't or cut down when he needs to. And he gets increasingly difficult. And one night, he actually punches a wall in front of his family and loses control. And he doesn't remember what happens, but everyone else does. So, Mike then goes and says he needs treatment. So he tries to go to AA, and AA didn't work for him. It just was the wrong message, the wrong group. He just couldn't fit into that, right? And so he then looks at rehab, and rehab, foundations, man, they're expensive. These programs are expensive, and mostly they take a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right? You need to put a whole month in. So he says, I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to lose my job. So he keeps drinking, right? He keeps drinking, and he tries to stop, but he can't. And a year or two later, the wife is leaving him. The job is telling him he's, on probation, right? And he's spiraling down. And then he does lose something big, like his marriage or job. And now he goes to rehab, right?
Yeah.
So the point of that is that people are identified early as to have, people know as they're spiraling down what's going on, and they look at their treatment options and they don't like them, right? And they're not for them.
Yeah.
And the numbers show pretty clearly there are 34 million people in the United States who are like Mike, who have alcohol use disorder.
Yeah.
Yet only 2.5 million of them get treated in any 1 year. It's only 7%, right? And almost all of those are at the severe stage. When things are lost. And
I saw it firsthand too with other guys when I was in rehab myself. Yeah. That, thankfully I hadn't yet lost my job or my family or anything like that, but there were guys and ladies in there too who had fucking lost everything. And imagine that being at the lowest of the low. You're in rehab, but now you have nothing to go back to too. Yeah. That is a very, very tough situation to be in.
Exactly. And in medicine in general, we try not to treat people at the end. I mean, if you take people with high blood pressure and only treat them after they've already had kidney failure, it's just not it's not a good plan, right?
Yeah.
So the barriers to people getting treatment earlier are that like social groups, like they want privacy, they don't want like a social group, and they need something affordable that they can do at home, right? And so that's what we built, and they also need things that are treatments that are effective, and it turns out there are a bunch of medications that actually cut down your alcohol consumption and do it pretty robustly.
Yeah.
And they've been available for many years. And doctors don't use them. They don't know about them. They don't use them, and they don't know how to deploy them. And even when they do them, patients after a while say, I'd rather, like it's Friday night coming up, and I'm gonna go out with the girls. Mm-hmm. So they stop their meds, right, and then go out with the girls. And of course, addiction being a disease of denial, they also don't really know how much they drink, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we built some things to combat that too. So people, we have breathalyzers that are hooked to smartphones, and we have people blow twice a day, at morning and evening, and they can see just how much they're drinking, and that's often revelatory all by itself. I mean, if you're doing a 0.2, right, after a night of drinking, and sometimes you wake up with a little alcohol on board, because it takes that long to metabolize. I mean, this is kind of eye opening.
Well, yeah, because I can think back about all the times, and I'm sure people out there listening can relate to this too. How many times have you been to the doctor just for a normal checkup or something? They say, well, do you drink alcohol? And you go, well, yeah. Well, how much do you drink? I don't ever said the real amount of alcohol that I drank. It was always like, oh, one or two drinks.
A couple.
Exactly. And part of that was because I was lying. And number two, I really didn't have any idea because it was just a free for all,
Exactly right. people always say a couple, and the doctor assumes. So the old joke in medicine is that the person with a drinking problem drinks more than I do, right?
Yeah.
That's how you judge it.
Yeah.
But that's not, So the doc just lets that slide. I drinks a couple, and the doc puts in whatever they drink, a couple of beers, a couple of wines, right? Right?
Yeah.
So what you learn in that question is what the doctor drinks.
Yeah.
Right.
Not the real issue at hand. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, in fact, back when I was back at that North of Market clinic, we had a patient. Who kept falling down, coming in drunk, and like a 70-year-old woman. And we'd say, "What do you're drinking?" She said, "I just drink 2 beers a day." Right. And we went and did a home visit. And her refrigerator had nothing but 40 ounces in it. Right?
You had a grandma drinking 40s.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy shit! What kind of 40s were they? Tell me they were like some. Tell me like they were some Steel Reserve or some Mickeys or something. Yeah.
It was hysterical. And then and that was all that was in the fridge. There was no food. Right.
Damn.
She wasn't lying to us. She was drinking 2 beers a day.
But they were 2 40s a day.
Exactly.
Wow. Gangster right there. Gangster grandma at its finest.
The lesson is 2 what? Or a couple of what?
Yeah.
Right? And any rate though, the breathalyzer makes you honest, right? It's like a speedometer, right? It makes you honest. And then we prescribe meds, and so what we do is we get a couple of days of baseline to see where people are actually at. Then we start prescribing medications, and the medications do work. And then we buff those up with, we push those higher with as needed counseling. So some people need counseling, some people don't. Many people have a therapist or other things. And even if they have a therapist, there's some rough spots. So we deploy the counselor when the person needs it.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
And we're building out an inner circle so that like you can get your spouse or a loved one in on this too, so they would have access to your breathalyzer results.
Got it.
Your medication adherence, and would also be able to give you encouragement or ratings. Say, Shane is doing better this week, worse this week, same.
So you have some good accountability. Maybe it's a spouse, a sponsor, a friend, whoever,
or all of those.
Or all
so
of
you
them.
Have it,
yeah.
So we build this inner circle. And then we're going to build an outer circle too that would be other people in the program who anonymously you could reach out to for questions.
So you're building community around it as well, which is huge. I mean, that's really one of the best things possible.
So that's the vision, and it's built at its core on a medical model of make a diagnosis and then prescribe a particular treatment. Yeah. Not everyone will need meds, but for the ones who and they may not need them forever once we get some of the other things going.
Yeah.
But I think the first step is getting under control, and the meds let you get that.
Yeah.
They let you get there.
Well, I think that I really, and I appreciate you coming on today and kind of breaking it down, John, and telling us a little more info, sharing some of the stories and stuff too. The history of the Tenderloin was awesome. I was really cool. I didn't know a lot about that. But, with the program, I just want to point out too, and you kind of alluded to this just a few minutes ago, is that not everything works for everybody. So is it a 12-step program? Is it a church? Is it a phone app? Is it community? What is it? There's all different kinds of resources out there. And I think it's important for us to not just get stuck on this is the one way it has to be. Like there's so many different kinds of things and you can try out different things. And DxRx is really, to me, it's a good example of that. It's something new. It's something different. And it may not work for everybody. It may work for a ton of people. I mean, it's really a cool thing with science and just community around it as well.
I mean, we've got 34 million people with alcohol use disorder.
Yeah.
Right? That's a lot of people. And you're absolutely right. There's not going to be any one system that's going to work for all of them. Right? So short of death.
Yeah.
Right, death will work for all.
Yeah,
they always stop drinking after they die. Right? But
I mean, unfortunately, that is a very true statement.
But so there's plenty of room for diversity of opinion. I think what's going to be somewhat hard. So like because we haven't had effective treatments like the ones we're talking about here, which actually offer some degree of control over drinking. For some of the old guard, where there was nothing but willpower, right? It's going to be hard to hear that there was a different way to go.
Yeah.
That other things might have worked. And I think that's going to be, so people who made it by being incredibly scrappy and by, throwing it all in on a particular system, right, of whatever it is, whether it's, residential or AA, or some kind of, confrontational system.
Yeah.
They're going to, because it worked for them, and because they were at the end of their rope, and because it was so, incredibly traumatic, they're going to want to keep it. They're going to believe that's the only way to go.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way I made it. So I think that what my appeal to that group of people would be to open your minds up to like different ways of doing it.
Well, and that's kind of what I was getting at too with that statement, because I'm with you, and I do agree for the most part on that too, is that there are different ways, especially as science, new programs, even things like podcasts, you know what I mean? I mean, that's a great example too. I'm not saying that is the any of these are the one all be all, but point being is there are a number of different ways and a number of different things that can work for each individual.
Exactly. So when I was in, after medical school, you do a residency, and that was the classic, you're in the hospital all the time. You're on call every third night. You spend every third night up, right, and work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Right. And that was our brutal training system. But you got to see all the cases, right? You get to be, you really understood what happened with a case.
Yeah.
And a lot of us older docs kind of resent the fact that the young docs don't do that, right? Because we did it, they should, right? We survived. We survived, the 110-hour work weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
Quit being a pussy, man up and get it.
Exactly. Quit being exactly. You haven't got it. You're not strong enough to do it.
Yeah.
And yet there's some. So there's still a lively debate in this. It's clear you don't lose too much by not having every night on call.
Yeah.
Though the bigger problem now is that the sign-outs, people get confused, and the medical problems come because the sign-outs aren't complete.
Sure.
But at any rate, the point is that all of us old docs actually really wanted the young ones to actually go through the exact same programs we did, because we did it, know.
Yeah.
Right. And therefore they should do it too.
And that would be hard, and that's hard to admit that there might be an easier way. You spent a lot of time, invested in that, I guess. And so for somebody else to come up and say, "Oh, I'm going to do it this way," and I'm going to cut half of the time off or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and it was you built a great. It was good. You built a great community, and you learned to trust people and work on teams. It was there were several advantages.
Yeah.
And even though you were completely exhausted, right?
Day. Yeah, sure.
Well,
I'm all about different paths, and ultimately at the end of the day, what this is really about is helping people to get clean, to get sober, and to really help change their lives.
Yes.
And I just appreciate you coming on today, John, and talking about getting to know you a bit, talking about the DxRx program. Super exciting stuff. Where can folks find you at, John, if they'd like to reach out to you?
They can email me at john@dxrxmedical.com. So that's DX, like the letters, that's diagnosis, DxRx Medical, MEDICAL.com. And that's also our website. They can find me through the website at DxRxMedical.com. Right?
Yes, got it. And then you can go to thatsoberguy.com as well, and you will see the DxRx logo, Stronger Than Alcohol, on the right-hand side. You can click on that, and that'll also take you right there. So you got a couple different outlets if you want to check it out. John, thanks so much for joining us again, man. It was a pleasure.
Okay, that was wonderful, Shane. I'm glad I did this. Fantastic.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thanks to Foundations Recovery Network, as well as Sober Nation, DxRx Medical for supporting the show. You can help support us on Patreon, and you can do that by going to thatsoberguy.com and go to the right-hand tab. You can click on the Patreon button there. Help us keep bringing you the best recovery, free, no bullshit content. I love it. I'm so blessed and so grateful to get to serve this community, and I really play my part in not only staying sober and trying to be the best example of that I can be, but also providing some great guests for you all out there. And I just appreciate the love and the support. So thanks again. Everybody have a great weekend. Have a fantastic day. Peace, love, respect. Keep your blood clean.